Welcome to Behind the Badge. This podcast aims to improve the health and well-being of frontline workers. Each episode features candid conversations with former and current frontline community members and subject matter experts. Join us as we explore the unique nature of serving in high-risk roles, sharing inspiring stories of resilience, strategies, and resources. We are not qualified health professionals, nor are we aligned with any organization. The opinions expressed in the podcast are solely our own. Additionally, the content may evoke strong emotional responses for some. Listener discretion is advised.
G'day everyone, welcome back to Behind the Badge. In this episode, we sit down with an absolute legend of rugby league. Our guest today has tasted success at every level of the game. He's represented Australia, won State of Origin series for New South Wales, represented the Penrith Panthers over 200 times, and he still holds multiple point scoring and appearance records at club and state level. Post-footy saw him move into a career in the media and also owning and operating multiple small businesses. In this chat today, we do talk a bit of footy, we talk a bit about transition, we talk about identity, loyalty, and we talk about how the habits that once kept him sharp on the field later help him reconnect, refocus, and heal once he hung the boots up. We have a bit of a chat about his mental health battles and the shift from self-medication to meditation and the life-changing impact that breathwork had for him. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Ryan Girdler. Welcome to the show, Ryan Girdler.
Thank you, boys. Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be on.
Mate, pleasure's all ours. Thanks for giving us your time today. What we usually try and do is provide a bit of context for our listeners and go back to your early days and your upbringing. You know, so where did you grow up? How did you grow up? And I guess what led you into footy?
I grew up, kind of pretty nomadic by nature, my family. We kind of moved from place to place. Parents owned small businesses, so you just got to get tagged along as a kid, and was put in through a lot of different schooling systems and whatnot, all that probably didn't agree with me at the time. I kind of was a kid that sort of liked the same thing and was never able to sort of sit in that because of the amount of movement that we did as a family. But yeah, ended up in Wollongong at about 12 years of age, and then went to a Catholic school down there, and wasn't really great academically. Just really found it hard to concentrate. I think was never really settled. Had an older brother, and that's where the kind of the footy thing started. I surfed a lot as a young boy, man, as well. So I sort of surfed and played league, and my dad played for Newtown back in the day, reserve grade. He sort of spent most of his time in Sydney. So I think it was just in the bloodlines, you know, and my brother's really quite a big guy. He was about 115 kilos when he turned into a man, like 16, 17. So I sort of spent a lot of time sort of avoiding him in the backyard as well, which certainly led to some of those the skills I guess I had later on. I was always sort of pretty skinny, pretty quick. Those sorts of things, and got picked up in the Steelers Academy, played SG ball and stuff like that when I was 15, 16, and we actually won the SG ball, and was put into kind of reserve grade back in the day in under 21s in about 89 or 90 as a 16, 17-year-old, and then went on to play, first grade for the Steelers, and then was pretty tight with Freddie, Brad Fittler, because we played junior reps against each other. And then he was obviously up at Penrith, and he was with Gus, and they got in my ear, and ended up being a 19-year-old kid and signing a contract to go up, and spent the next 14 years in Penrith.
So we just talk about the moment, I guess, going from the Steelers to Penrith, signing that contract. How was that for you? Like I said, quite nomadic, moving around. I imagine that's quite a big moment signing with a club like Penrith.
Yeah, like they won the comp in 91. So I signed in 92 on the back of like my first full year in first grade. And unfortunately, Benny Alexander died in 92. So by the time I got there in 93, it was a really different environment. There was a lot of confusion, a lot of emotion. Brandy and MG and all those guys were and Garth, there was a split there, obviously. And yeah, it just wasn't a great time to be at that club for those unfortunate circumstances. And yeah, I was just a young kid going up there, kind of eyes wide open, just pretty excited to play with all those boys, but it just wasn't the club that had won the comp a couple of years ago because of the tragedy. So, but yeah, like it was a big decision to leave Wollongong, but I guess, just being so used to moving around, it just seemed like the right thing to do at the time. The Steelers had a really good back line. They had like McGregor and Rodwell and Wishart and McIndoe, and it was a bit of an all-star cast if you remember any of those names, boys. And so, yeah, I kind of felt like I was ready to play more first grade than the year before. I played like every game up until the finals because there was always one of those boys out, and they just put me in centres or wing or wherever. They just 5'8" sometimes, and it got to the semi-finals, and all those boys came back, and I was kind of on the bench, and I was like, which was fine because those guys are all great players, and I was a kid, but I just thought I was ready, and then. Gus kind of, I think, sensed that and got me up to Penrith. So it was a big change at the time, but it just seemed like it was the right thing to do.
From there, after signing with Penrith, you obviously stayed there for the entirety of your career. Was that, I guess, because you said you do like routine and you sort of felt like you do like staying in one place. Do you think that was a result of that?
Yeah, I unknowingly. Yeah, but I just like the community. I like the club. I grew to really sort of like the area, and there was opportunities to move later on in my career. But I was just really content. I was just got to the point where there was a couple of years to go, and I signed a deal in 2000, my last 4-year deal, and it was like we had some good kids in that coming through, but I never really thought we were a legitimate chance of winning a premiership. And I made that. I spoke to the manager at the time. I said, but that's what it is. I'm just going to be one of those guys that plays for 14 or 15 years and doesn't win a comp. And if that's the way that it is, but I'm loyal to the club and I feel like I belong out here. That's just what it is. And fortunately, that wasn't the way that it was, and we got to win that title. And I'm so glad that I stayed there and got to be part of that as well. So it kind of worked out in the end, but I was just really settled there and happy to be there, to be honest. And I didn't have a family, so it was kind of like it was always me just making the decisions. I didn't have a wife or kids or anything like that while I was playing. So it was pretty easy for me just to make those decisions.
I think one of the things that I've noticed in the modern day football compared to when you guys were coming through, I won't say, we've lost it or they've lost it, but there's that sense of the pride of the jerseys almost disappearing. It's about, if I go to this club here, I can earn that, and they're sort of flicking between clubs, whereas, you had those loyal players that stayed with that club, and it was the jersey that meant more than anything. I mean, that's obviously just a novice league watching from the outside. But
no, I think that's valid. I think that's very valid. But you also got to look at it both ways. I mean, the clubs are running a business as well.
That's
and
right,
as soon as you're not doing a job for them, you might have been there 8 years and you might have busted your ass for them for a long period of time in the middle of the field. And then all of a sudden, some young guy comes up and they take your spot and you're cast aside as well. So I think the balance of that is there. But, for me, it was part of my personality. I think I'm kind of loyal by nature. And I just felt like that the club had done a lot for me, and I was willing to just repay them with all that I could, which was to just perform the best that I could on a weekly basis. I always say that rugby league actually doesn't give you anything. A lot of people say, I'm really grateful for what it gave me. It provides you an opportunity, but it's what you do with that opportunity. And it's bloody hard to make it, harder these days than it probably was back then. But even back then, I think about, you don't know, coming from being a 17-year-old kid in an academy and then, you just get so used to the rigors of and the physicality of like what daily life is like as a professional athlete. And it's not actually until you retire and you look back and you think, shit, what was I thinking? How long did I do that for? Why did I do that again? Because obviously there's the remuneration and everyone hears about that, and there's obviously some upsides. But, take nothing away from what those guys put their bodies through and their mind and the whole bit and the pressures that come with it. And they get rewarded. I get that.
Yeah,
I get that. They get paid well. Some of them do. Yeah. Some of them on a couple of $100,000 a year, doing exactly what the other guys are doing, same job, could earn more somewhere else. But, they obviously love what they do. And, it's an interesting point there you make, Jace, for sure.
So you would have been, when you went to Penrith, how old were you then?
I was 19.
I remember me as a 19-year-old and probably hopeless, how do you, because I'd imagine when you're in that arena, it's the pressures that must be upon all the players to perform. You're constantly playing a game whether it be, Sunday or Wednesday night midweek games or whatever, but you're constantly critical of your own performance. I guess what I'm trying to get at, mentally, how challenging is that to be at that elite level? Like we all see the positives of it, winning games and coming off and celebrating, but to be actually in that team playing week in, week out, trying to get your performance level right because you can be dropped, and it's got to be almost mental torture sometimes to, am I playing right? Am I performing where I need to be? And
then throw Phil Gould into the mix, and then you got mental torture. 19-year-old kid. Sometimes he'd ring me up at we'd have a Saturday game and a Sunday game, and you'd always have the day off. We used to have the day off before the game, and so sometimes I was living in Wollongong for that first year, and he was in Penrith. Obviously, he'd ring me up at 10 o'clock on the Friday night before we had a day off, and he'd say, "Girdles." I'd say, "Yeah, Gus." And this is pre, I think, mobile phone, so this is he'd ring the home phone pretty much. And, mate, what are you doing tomorrow? I'm like, day off, Gus. I'm just going to rest. And he said, mate, I want to come up here. I want to see you. And then, I'd get in the car, and he'd know it'd be an hour and 30-minute drive all the way up to Penrith. And I'd get out at his house. I was thinking, well, it's a day off. What am I doing? I'm playing tomorrow. I'm here. I drive it up. And then he'd go, how you feeling? I'm so good, mate. He goes, yeah, you ready to go tomorrow? I said, good. He said, we're going to need your best tomorrow. I go, yeah, mate, I know that. And he'd go, all right, mate, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll drive home for an hour. Just so, just different things like that. But they just shape you, their stories and the things. And we're going to talk about discipline that later on. I mean, the disciplines around that, I didn't realise at the time what it actually was, but now I actually do know, making sure because I'm driving for an hour and a half thinking about the game. I was thinking about tomorrow. I was a bit angry at Gas, but I was, you know what I mean? It gave me time, actually 3 hours in the day before the game as a 19-year-old to actually be focused on what I was doing. And you don't realise that at the time. And I think that sort of it aligned with your question. You don't, when you're 19, have all those things probably. I didn't anyway. I can't speak for the other kids. But I didn't have all that going on in my mind. You're a 19-year-old, you're pretty jacked up, you're pretty confident in yourself, you're making your way, you're turning up, you're playing your best, you're going out, you're partying, you're still living. Back then we certainly could. You could all those worlds could sort of come together. These days not so much. But back then you could still live a pretty cool life as a 19-year-old without all of the pressures and without all of the carry-on that go with being a professional athlete these days. So yeah, I loved that time. I got a lot of great memories, and a lot of us were. It was the first time that they took players professionally. Penrith did it, I think, in mid-90s. They took us, out of 9 to 5, and then because originally, we used to train in the afternoons, and guys would come from their job, and then we'd do a ball session at 5 o'clock. And then weights were optional at the end of it because guys had to go home to their families, had to get ready for work, tomorrow. So there was, I think, Brandy and Freddie, myself, and John Cartwright, and I think MG. We had a bit of a crew, and they pulled us all out of that and then started making us work in the Leagues Club where we were walking around, talking to people, playing the pokies, calling bingo, just doing weird shit at the club just to fill our days. mainly playing the pokies, until we'd train at night. And then in 97, I think it was, everyone then became professional and transitioned into that like all-day training thing, which took a couple of years to get right as well, because, Roy Simmons was the coach at the time, and he just thought because you guys were there, you were going to train hard, and they just flogged us for a couple of years there straight until we got some sports science guys in there and they got the balance right. Then they started controlling diet, and that was the start of the, I think the game that we have now is in sort of that late 90s when specialist coaches came in and players got separated and didn't have to do the same thing. Everyone running 15K time trials wasn't beneficial when you're trying to put on weight, so then all of a sudden people were getting pulled out of different things and all that started changing. The dynamic of the training started changing, and that's when you saw the game develop a lot to what it is now, and go through those different phases of what's important.
Yeah.
So on that, Girds, you said when you sort of first rocked up and started your professional playing journey, there was blokes still working. So they've got another skill or another job or another income source. And then through that transition, like you just said, NRL's gone to professional players. Do you think in that transition now, that identity of that professional rugby league player is, they hold that identity, and then at the expense of like having another skill or another job or another, I guess, a plan B, for want of a better word?
I think it just depends on the personality and the profile. There's some guys that need their whole focus to be on the game. Because you know what it's like in life. You get different situations. If you've got a job and you're not happy in the job, it can affect your family life and so forth. So if you've got a guy that's out there working kind of a job or running a business, when things don't go so well, or he made it's about investment and that can affect his performance on the weekend, well then you got to make sure that the right guys can handle the right situations, because you know these clubs can't have guys that are distracted at all. So I think they're a lot more rounded these days. The players, when they come through, they understand that there's a shelf life. Back then we didn't even think like that. No one was asking questions about what are you going to do post career. So, there's a more of an awareness around it now, and it's up to the individual. It's like, do I want to take on another load? Like, is that going to be a distraction for me? If the club sees you've taken on things that are distracting you from there, they're gonna cull that stuff pretty quickly. But there's other guys out there that have got investments and running different businesses that are learning skills that just transition into that other part of their life when they're a professional athlete and they do it seamlessly. So it just depends. I think it's encouraged now. Like the clubs actually understand that the most important, all the clubs really want, play well for and all that aside, all they really want is to get results on weekends. And I understand that. They live or die by that. That's the game. They're not there about making sure everyone's got a post career, post league career and stuff like that. They're not... They don't care. Their jobs as a CEO and as a head coach, they live and die by the results. So yeah, I think for that to be focused on now is how balanced are our players? How are we getting the best out of them? Do we want them to have like a balanced life? And we know that if we've got a balanced roster on and off the field, then we're getting better results. So therefore our focus is going to be on balancing the roster. If there was no results based on the balance of the roster, well then there'd be no focus on what the players are doing other than just getting out there and getting the job done.
Yeah, cool. I think that awareness of that shelf life is a big thing too, right? Like if you're not even thinking, because like I said, you had a 14, 15 year career, and that's probably at the long end of the career too. It's probably pretty rare for people to be playing top flight football for 15 years. The more likely average span is, I'm hazarded guessing, way less than that for most people.
Yeah, I think it's like 50 games or something or 40 or 50 games is
so roughly 2 years.
Yeah, a couple of years generally. Yeah,
it's probably pretty important to be thinking post football. And it's good to hear that awareness is coming through and thinking,
definitely,
what do I do after that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Career?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So when you transitioned go back half a step. So you're playing first grade for Penrith, then along comes obviously Origin level, play for your country, Australia. Your first Origin year, what?
Well, I played in the split year. I played in 97.
Oh, yeah. So
which
that
was the
the
Super League split.
Yep.
And then they didn't allow us to play in 98 when we came back together. And then, it was back play the combined origin in 99. Yeah.
How much of a shift was that going from club level to state level, origin level?
It was a big shift. For me, it was I was just always kind of waiting for it. I just felt like that was part of my journey. And so when it happened, I was like, what it sort of had the attitude of why did it take so long? Because there was a couple of years there where I felt like I should have been playing that I wasn't. And so, the natural progression of that for me was really exciting. I couldn't wait to get in and spend time because we hadn't had it, after all that drama that happened out there at Penrith, we hadn't had a lot of success. And being a centre in a side that didn't have a lot of success and not having, dominant sort of NRL sort of games on a weekly basis was frustrating. So it was actually really good to get in there with the best players around just to actually see what that was going to be like preparation-wise at training, and then just go out there and play with some of those guys like, Loz and Lazo and, it was Bradley Clyde. I got to share the field with some of those guys like in the early part of my career. And then obviously there was, Freddie and Joey and we had some, quality New South Wales sides in those early 2000s as well. So, I just really enjoyed it. The intensity, I think, of the week takes a little bit to get used to, the fanfare and that around it and the demands that are put on that team. But, running out at Suncorp or at Homebush in front of a packed crowd in a blue jersey, that's as good as it gets.
I couldn't imagine that feeling And of course, with anything, I remember I play in a band, and I remember after my first gig, and I woke up the next day thinking, it was, I want more, I want more, I want more.
Yeah.
And it was that almost the sadness that gig's over. Oh, shit, that gig's over. It was just a real emotional sort of journey into that sort of, certainly not, that's not elite level, that's just playing in a pub somewhere. But I can imagine that for certain type of person in that, whether it be NRL or AFL, whatever, but it must be a bit of a sort of mental challenge to be able to get through those phases. Apart from the the excitement of it all, but there's I watch some of the players and under a high ball, I almost have an anxiety attack thinking if this person drops this ball in front of 50,000 people, what does it do to their mental state for that couple of seconds of how do they shift back into get over that plough forward, and it's
it's funny. It's interesting you mentioned that. There's no tools or techniques put even back in the day. Maybe there are now. It's just always been the old mate. Just get over it. Yeah. Move on. But there's actually kind of no techniques that have ever been put into place. And so again, it just comes back to that individual. How disciplined is he? With his comes back to preparation at that level. It's how many times have I taken this ball? Because when that ball goes up, what you want to know is that you've done the work.
Yeah.
And if you've done the work and you take it, well, then it's a bonus. If you don't take it, you've done the work. Yeah. And then the next time it comes, you've done the work. But if you haven't done the work, and that's what they always say about, you go to that level, you get shown up. If you just haven't done the work and you haven't prepared in those sort of situations, the guys. And that's why, with your teammates and that, when you go into those environments, you want to know that they've done the work. And that's why through the week, you're making sure everyone's done the work because they're letting you down and you're letting them down, not just yourself. So there's a lot of pressure comes in, internally for those as well, because you definitely, you get exposed if you've got that mindset, and you can only have that mindset at that level if you haven't done the work.
You drop a ball, guess where the next 10 kicks are coming?
Yeah.
Straight at you.
That's it. But, the mindset of most of the guys these days, if they drop that first one, is give me another one.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Give me another one.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got that mindset, mate, the coach is going to pull, he's going to pull you aside and say, mate, you're not up to it. You go back and do the work.
Yeah.
You got to be wanting those balls coming to you.
Those conversations with coaches in those pivotal moments, I imagine they can be pretty brutal.
I was pretty lucky You know, like I was pretty fortunate where I got on well with most coaches because I had pretty good work ethic and was always, you know, trying to push and help the people that around me. So I had a pretty good mindset around it. So I didn't feel the wrath like that often. But yeah, I saw some incidents in some change rooms that, you know, but I mean, the coach is just under pressure. He's just trying to get the best out of the individual. He's got like 30 personalities that he needs to deal with, 30 of them. You know, that's why I was low maintenance, you know, because he had some big personalities there that he needed to, like, you know, spend a couple of hours every week on trying to get them where they needed to be to go out and get the performance. So, big job, man management, massive job.
Wouldn't be a coach for quids, would you?
Well, yeah, no, it was no. I'd probably get into more inclined to get into coaching now than when I retired because back then it was like there was a lot of analysis and video, and I just can't watch video.
Yeah.
I didn't like it as a player, and then I went back in as an assistant coach at Penrith, and they just had me watching video, and I was sitting there going, oh my God, I don't want to be watching video. I like the other side of it. I like the psychology of it, the man management side of it. That really would stimulate me, but the video and what it takes to get into that role, I'm just not there. So, yeah, it wasn't for me.
I think Joey made the same point.
Did he?
On TV the other night, he said, I couldn't do the video.
Yeah.
Just get out there and let's just train.
Yeah. Video's not for everyone, but it's important, you know, and they learn a lot from it these days, the players. You just see, and the really good ones spend a lot of time analysing, and that's their craft, and I respect that, but it just certainly wasn't for me at the time.
It's something that we sort of talk about a little bit, Jason and I, is some of these parallels that we see between elite sport and our world in the frontline community. Obviously just observations because neither of us are elite sportsmen or ever have been or ever will be. But one of those parallels is potentially, like you're alluding to, Jace, that, you know, that up and that down and then, you know, potentially running out with that Blues jersey in front of 50,000 people. I imagine the nervous system is going to be jacked up, the amount of adrenaline and cortisol and stuff pumping through you, and then having to manage that and then perform through that, I imagine would be tricky in itself. But like you said, there was no tools and techniques to sort of deal with that. It's just sort of came down to, at an individual level, to sort of work out what works and didn't work in managing that. Is that?
Yeah, like it was always, people would say, you know, like don't burn your energy, like, you know, just be conscious of it, but they would never give you any tools on like how to manage it. So, you know, some of the stuff that we do now with breathing, and you see some of the teams have incorporated that into part of their game. When I've seen the Roosters do like some fire breathing, some activation breath in the change rooms before they go out. You see a lot of sides after they score points come back to the middle, get arm in arm, and they stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, so they're just slowing down their breathing rate. Yeah, and they're getting their pH levels back to where they need to be so they can make sort of better decisions, so they're calmer. And also, you know, they can, with breathing, making sure they breathe through the nose, which is really important as well, because most people, when you're playing sport, are open your mouth and breathing, you know, getting as much air as you can in. So just all those different techniques that they use now just to calm themselves down and centre themselves during the game. Yeah, that wasn't around then. If you would have been seen doing some sort of breath work back in the 90s, someone would have slapped you over the back of their head. But I wish, they've been around for thousands of years, and they've been used, these techniques, for so many different things. Slowly they're making their way into professional sport. You see a lot of guys, especially surfers and that now, using different breathing techniques and stuff. So it's great to see, because it's really going to help these guys, prepare for games, post-game, calm down, centre themselves, get back ready for some rest if they've got to play in the next couple of days, or just go back and see family or whatever. So, yeah, I can definitely see the similarities there with, what you guys get up to and what the athletes get up to in relation to, preparing for an event, not knowing what to expect, and then driving home from it post, the situation. I mean, what does that look like? And it's good to see that there are some techniques now being sort of they're making their way into sport. Are they making their way into, your kind of line of work?
Well, that's a difficult one to answer on behalf of all organisations, but I'd say the ones that we have experienced. It's probably very slowly. Hopefully, with things like this, it becomes more and more.
It's all about
apparent.
awareness, isn't it? Really,
Exactly right.
that's all it is.
That education
having conversations.
piece.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, so hopefully, things like this is the catalyst for people to start thinking about that. Because like you said, there's two sides to that coin. One is that pre-event or exposure or whatever, and then the other side is coming back down with our nervous system and regulating back down to a more normal state. And I guess the more you do it, the more comfortable you get to, and the less you might think, or the less you might think you need to do that stuff. I imagine that's probably fairly similar for you. Like, you've played over 200 NRL games. You start to become more familiar, I'm guessing, with the process and with what happens.
Yeah, and like some people, especially these days, it is part of, it's a process. They go through their game day preparations or whatever it may be, and they find they eat the same thing, and they want they've got James Graham and those guys need to drive a certain way to the ground and park in a certain position and all that sort of stuff, and that is their way of regulating their preparation, But I don't know what that does for the nervous system, or what that does kind of for the lungs, or the capacity to to stay calm in those different situations. I'd imagine not much. You just find your own ways just to prepare for the game, so that you can go out there and perform at your absolute best. But there's not like some guys will come and do weights. You have some guys they'll want to, they get through that kind of their first exposure to exhaustion. So they'll push really hard in the gym an hour before the game, especially some of those big forwards, those middle players that want to be on their second wind, let's say, by the time they get into the game. And you got some other guys, the faster guys, and they'll be doing some speed work, and the guys will be catching bombs and stuff like that. So everyone goes into their own sort of regular pre-game rituals, but none of it is around like breathing or relaxing or staying calm and those things. It wasn't. It might be a little bit more now. I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
Because I'd imagine, like, out of that 80-minute game, how long would you be in fight or flight mode for?
Oh, it just depends on where you are. What position you are. But you'd be in the sympathetic system like the whole game, I would imagine. Yeah. The whole game.
Whereas I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, where we're trying to be is to flick that to the other side, so we can make those decisions, and you don't want to be in sympathetic mode. It's hard not to get caught up in that when you get that call come over of the worst day out or whatever it is, but you've got to try and get back to that parasympathetic to make those good decisions. Whereas I see you guys that running on the field, the adrenaline must be just out of control, and then it's that fight or flight the whole game. Attack, defend. Yeah. So
that's when you need it, and that's what it's right. Supposed to be in that. That's the mode that you need to be. That's where you're going to perform. And before the game and after the game and at training and different things like that, I mean, that's when you don't need to be. That's when you don't need to be burning that sort of those energies up, and your breathing's just like a really big part to help you sort of regulate those different modes. It's the only way you can regulate those different modes, and there's just no focus on it, or there wasn't. And hopefully there's becoming a time now where they realise just how important. It's not even that hard, to be honest. It's actually there's so many quick techniques that can take a couple of minutes just to pull you out of a certain place to make you feel a certain way, that everyone can use, and that I use daily, essentially. You don't need to be a professional athlete or a first responder to be using breathing techniques. They've been used for thousands of years for different things. And I train my kids, and they've got techniques that they use before they go into like a dance performance, or if my oldest one's going to work and she gets a bit nervous, and she works at a little cafe and they've got a big lineup, she's got techniques just to help herself through that, and it ends up happening automatically, and that's where it gets to, with anything, if you're disciplined and you're continually sort of practicing it,
muscle memory. Yeah,
it just becomes automatic. And then you don't even know why you're relaxed, but you're relaxed in a situation where normally you could be a little overwhelmed.
I like that point that you make, Girds. It's like stress is is indiscriminate. We've all got stress, and it's relative to the individual as well. So having ways to deal with it is important for everybody, not just, someone in a high trauma occupation or an elite sportsman. Like, it's everybody can apply this, because the stress that individual is feeling is 100% valid, and it's relative to them. So managing that in the moment, whatever moment that is important,
isn't it?
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. Mate, let's switch to the transition out of footy. So I think off air you said you signed that last contract of yours around that 2000 mark. When did you start looking towards post-footy and what you were going to be doing once you retired?
It's funny. I guess a couple of years out, you start thinking about what things are going to look like at the end of your career. For me, it was I had some opportunities in the media, but I just kind of felt like I needed some time away from the game, and I'd also met a girl who's my wife now, who's German. And I wanted to do some travel because, I'd done some travel through work, but I'd never been just able to go somewhere and just relax and enjoy it really for a long period of time. So it was always for me about spending some time ticking some of the boxes that, I'd missed out on through my career. Not, I didn't feel sorry for myself. I was grateful for what had happened, but it was now time to go and take the pressure off just a little bit, get away from the game. So I did that for about 6 months, and then came back, and then that's when it kind of got really difficult. It was like, okay, so you kind of find the things that you don't want to do, but how do you find the things that you do want to do, and what's your skill set like? I knew that I'd had success in a pretty difficult occupation, and I knew that I knew how to be disciplined. I was like articulate with preparation. There was a lot of things that I knew would cross over and transition into like a normal job, but I didn't know what I was passionate about or what I wanted to do. And you have all this sort of this mental energy and this physical energy that was able to be exhausted with the job, and then so what was I going to be? Where was that going to go? And obviously to be a professional athlete, or for me, the drive that you have continually pushing yourself, where does that go? That just doesn't stop. So what am I going to what am I going to go and be like a barista and just push myself to make like ridiculous amounts of coffee, and continually, where am I getting the challenge from, and where does all that, because that just doesn't go away after like 15 years or maybe 25 years because you're a little kid doing it as well, so that was the difficult part. I ended up like driving myself crazy with the mind and not being able to control that part of my life, and just started spiraling. So where am I? How do I start to numb the pain of the not so much the physical, because I was a bit broken anyway, but the mental side of falling out of the job and the disciplines that it took to be in that job, and that's where it was I spoke to you about it. I went and saw a doctor, and he gave me antidepressants, and I took them for a couple of weeks and thought, I don't even know who I am. I just went numb. And then you self-medicate with alcohol, and then you go down that path, and then there's like talk therapy, and then you go down there, and that's all just felt like it was just ticking boxes for me, so I was just I guess the inner dialogue was what really troubled me, and I just, the only way I could silence that, where I'd go surfing, I'd go to the gym, I bought a business and end up like working like physically really hard and getting into that, but doing those kind of things, there wasn't the same. You just wasn't getting the same sort of relief out of it and benefits out of it. So yeah, it was a bit of a difficult time.
Do you think that's because in your footy career you had a very clear sense of purpose? Whenever you were obviously doing all the work that you had to do within that, all the training and preparation, all that discipline was for a very clear reason. That was to win footy games. And then, like you said, once you get out, maybe that you don't have that purpose of winning footy games anymore. Yeah. So where does that purpose come from? Where do you direct that self and that energy? And
that's the battle. Yeah, that's absolutely the battle. You know, I was very fortunate that, you know, I met my wife and my girlfriend at the time, and she was headed down a little bit of a different path. She was into yoga, kind of into some different things that I'd never really looked at. And so I battled away, I reckon, for about 3 or 4 years, just being really destructive, you know, but, you know, using alcohol to escape and all those sorts of things, mixing with the wrong people, started gambling, like all those toxic things that I was just kind of, you know, holding on to just because I didn't really know there was any other outlets, you know. And so I think it was about 3 years or 4 years after she sort of saw the where I was headed and just said, you know, you need to do something about this. And she said, she took me to it was like a meditation retreat. And I was like kicking and screaming, going, I'm not going to no meditation retreat. What are you doing, you know? And I'd done a bit of yoga, but I'd done it just to stay supple and for, you know, a bit of flexibility and stuff like that as I was aging, but hadn't really considered it for any other reason. So, yeah, I was able to go out there and sit in like a meditation retreat for a couple of days, which was probably one of the most difficult things that I've ever done. You know, sitting with the self is that early part of the journey. Anyone that thinks that they can just get into that sort of practice and sit comfortably, you know, is being unrealistic. It's traumatic, you know, you're facing your inner demons in silence and the mind and all the programming and conditioning that's happened like up until that point where you choose to go down that path. Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard. The first 3 months of, you know, I made a commitment to myself that when I came out of this retreat, I would sit for 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening until I broke it. And that was, I reckon, about 3 months before I started actually enjoying it.
Yeah, right.
Or even just getting some benefits out of it. And the battles kind of just slowly subside. But for the first 3 months, it was horrific. I wanted to kill someone.
That's
namely myself, really.
That's a common thread talking to people about meditation. They go, "Oh, I've tried it and I can't do it because my mind's
too busy."
Too busy, yeah.
I love that one. It's not for me. My mind's too busy. It's like, yeah. Well, that go back to the first part of what I just spoke about. Then, you know, anyone that thinks they're just going to sit in there and, you know, not be confronted with the discomfort of what meditation represents is just being unrealistic.
Yeah.
It is for everyone. We can all do it. You just need to be disciplined and you need to push through those parts. And the benefits when you come out the other side, it's the best thing that I've ever done. It's the best thing that I've ever done, without a doubt. I'd be an absolute maniac, you know, if I wasn't able to push through that. And it always comes back to, you know, like people say, I'll do anything for my family, you know. Well, what's anything look like for you? Because anything for me was, okay, like I had young kids at this point, you know, like I was being destructive, I was working hard, I had health issues, I was eating shit. I was just in this toxic environment that I'd put myself in because I felt like, you know, because my mind was actually just being so destructive, you know, and bit by bit I was just going down a really ugly path. And I just had to find my anything. And it's like, okay, so what's anything? Is anything meditation? Okay, if that's the hardest thing that I can do and I'm going to do some research about it, well, let's sit in it. Let's do it because that's my anything. And then I sat in my anything, you know, and then I came out of it the other side and then I have not looked back.
I think, too, that you having that built-in discipline aspect of, you know, yourself anyway, for someone who... You see people out there that get caught up in that world and it's too hard. Like, let's say, obesity. I can't stop. It's just too... It's easy to say, you know, I'll just keep going the path I am. But I suppose your discipline aspect of it would be a big advantage, you know, that I'm going to do this 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. I'm going to get benefits out of this.
Yeah. But, I mean, everyone's got discipline. You know, you just think about the discipline. Like, I've got a lot of mates that go for a run in the morning so they can have half a dozen beers at night. That's discipline. And they feel good. It's like, I can drink now, and I'm not judging anyone. You know, everyone's got their own journey and their own story and their own battles. So That's what it is. But it doesn't even need to be 20 minutes. And there's so much stuff now online. Like I went to a retreat, which was really good for me because it just sat me in that environment. And I was so twitchy and and there was all this calmness. I wanted to break everything in the place, I tell you. But there's so many, there's apps now and there's things and there's baby steps. And, like the thing is with breathing, like I went the other way. I went from meditation to breathing. And breathing is, actually, what the Indian culture use for stilling themselves for meditation. I went the other way. I just sat with myself and had this guy gave me this mantra, and I was just repeating that mantra over and over and over. That would still the mind and allow me to, and I had that mantra for probably a year when I'd use it when the mind had come in again, and I'd roll out the mantra and it'd disappear and off I'd go again, So it was really productive. But there's so many other ways to find stillness now through other techniques, and breathing is the best one. Yeah. That's why it was actually invented. It's so, it's almost like a cheat code for meditation, because once you go into a certain breathing technique, at the end of it, the mind's gone and you're just ready for stillness and you sit in that meditative state. So there's plenty of techniques and plenty of ways to do it now. And I know it's, for people in the West, meditations doesn't seem like a thing, it's never been a big part of my family or my life or whatever it may be, but it's been around for a long time for a reason. And it's really starting to, I think people are just starting to open up to those sorts of modalities now where they know that there's more than, what's been around, and they're trying it, and that's amazing. It's amazing.
So is that a practice that you've held since that retreat? Was that around, I don't know, 08, something like that?
Yeah, it was probably around then. So I reckon I've probably been sort of meditating now for maybe 12 or 13 years, I'd say.
Yeah, awesome.
And then the breathwork thing kind of I dabbled in it, and then I reckon that came about 4 years later.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at that point, in that 08 point where your then girlfriend gripped you up and said, it's time to do something about this, you were working in the media at that point?
No, I'd opened a cafe.
Yep.
And I was sort of running a cafe, roasting coffee, wholesaling sort of to other cafes.
Yep.
And then, Triple M came to me in about 2011, and they told me they got the rights, and would I be interested in coming back and doing some broadcasting on Triple M? And that had given me, about 6 years out of the game. So I wasn't even watching. I'd watch a grand final, watch the Origins, I'd watch a grand final, but I'd watch Penrith every now and again in that other time. But I was running a business, had a young family, just trying to keep my head above water like most people, So, footy wasn't a big part of my life in that period. And then when Triple M sort of made that offer, I jumped in behind the mic again, which had been a fair while between doing stuff on the footy show and that sort of stuff back in the early 2000s. And found a really good family, really good people there at Triple M, and was able to stay there for 14 years as well,
Yeah, wow. So another sort of lengthy career in that as well.
Yeah.
Talking about, the meditation breathwork stuff, and I guess this is going to lead into the stuff that you're doing now with IMRA. At what point did that stuff start bubbling away and start surfacing that, this is a sort of direction that I want to go? Was there sort of any one, I guess, event or moment, or is it just sort of something that's crept up over time?
Yeah, I would say that, it was just all for getting the best out of myself and, providing, the best environment for my family and my community and stuff. That's all I was doing it for originally. And then we moved from Sydney to Queensland in 21, I don't know, actually, one of those. And then so I had my own practices, was well versed in, doing what I needed to do for me, and then, sort of stepped away from the cafes from an operational perspective after we opened a few, and I was deeply involved in that, and then had the radio, and then had the kids, and was pretty busy. And then we moved up here, and my wife, for my birthday, took me to, there was like this, because I'd done pranayama, like, pranayamas are basically just like, little breathwork techniques before meditation. I'd done that. I'd never really done a little bit of Wim Hof, where it's doing the deep breathing for periods of time and the long breath holds and all that sort of stuff. I played around with that, but I'd never laid down in a breathwork session and had someone take me on a journey. Never had anyone take me into an altered state of consciousness. And so my wife took me to this, of course, took me to this day where a good friend of mine now, Dan, up here, laid me down like you guys experienced. And then, put me into a breathing technique for like an hour and a half. And I was like, and I'd breathe for 10 or 15 minutes with some of these pranayamas and the Wim Hof stuff. You do like 5 or 6 sets or whatever. But I was continually breathing for like an hour and a half. And at some point, I remember I was laying there, and I was everything and nothing, and I realised I was just energy. So I know this sounds weird, and for people that haven't done this sort of work before, they're going to think I've lost my mind. Maybe I have, but you guys know what I'm talking about, because this is what happens. Like when you do a continuous like breathing technique, like we do. For a long period of time, you can go into a past life, you can go into an altered state of consciousness, you can face trauma, whatever it may be that comes up will come up at that time. And for me, on this experience was I just realised that I was everything and nothing, and so I just became like little fractals. And I was like, oh my God. And so I started breathing deeper, and then I just disappeared completely. And then I came out of it, and they were playing Dan was playing the didge around me, and I had all ancestors coming in and all different stuff going on. That was just so wild. And then I came out and I said, like, mate, what was that? I went up to him at the end of it. I didn't know. I said, mate, what the hell was that? He's like, yeah, pretty crazy, right? I'm like, unbelievable. I said, I've got to get that out. I've got to get that out to the people, because that's something that people need to experience. And he's like, brother, I'm doing a facilitator's course in a couple of weeks. Why don't you come up and do it? And I'm like, sign me up. So then I went up and did this course, I don't know, 4 years ago or something, that was more about that style of like what in the West we call like breath work. Yep. Obviously, it's always been pranayama, but over here we call it as breath work, and that's kind of like the buzzword, and everyone knows what that is now, and there's lots of different techniques to that. This was a holotropic technique that Dan was teaching, and I went up and did a week in the bush, and then have been facilitating ever since in my own way, and then sound healing and that as well, as sound and the vibration, especially of like some of the traditional instruments that we use. Also creates a certain energy and while you guys are in that altered state. So I've been doing that now for like 4 years at that level. So that's the journey into that work, and then and that's what I'm super passionate about, giving people an opportunity to go into that, and then developing different techniques for trauma. Because the holotropic one is a breath a mouth breathing technique, and it's pretty confronting. It's pretty full on. So for a lot of the time, we go back into a nose breathing technique, which is just a little bit more subtle, but still has the same sort of implications. It's deep work, but for people that have been exposed to trauma and things like that, that are already in that sympathetic sort of breathing patterns, we take them into a nose breathing technique, which is a little bit calmer, and then we slowly build them into what's a pretty full-on sort of tempo where they can experience what they need to.
I mean, well, for the listeners, I guess Josh and I were lucky enough to go along to one of your sessions here in Brisbane, and I mean we both had a 5-10 minute chat after it to understand each other's journey, and I remember driving there and saying to my partner, she came along, and I just said, oh, I'm really apprehensive. Like, she's going, why? And I said, well, going back to the meditation style, I was always the one, like, close my eyes. Okay, this afternoon I've got to get the clothes out in the line. I've got to pick up, do this, do that. Yeah. And it seemed to be hard for me to do that sort of meditation. And someone once said to me, that's okay, because that's still meditation. You might be thinking your mind's busy, but that's okay. So I was a bit apprehensive, and I said to my partner, I said, what if I do happen to go into this, space and am I going to snore or am I going to, So I walked in and this is my personal experience. When I walked in, I felt like, and I'm not sure how many of those guests that day were your regulars or, if it was a totally new group. But I got the sense that everyone was sort of guarded, as in their guards were up. And I remember coming out of it when you called us all back in to the room, so to speak. It felt like everybody was, hey man, how you going? Like everyone was just that connecting and talking to different people. Even a look across the room to someone, I think everyone felt the same. Where I went with it was, I remember the breathing, and I started getting a little bit concerned, with I guess it's that stage of almost hyperventilation. And I think, oh God, I don't want to hyperventilate because that's going to be pretty crazy. And then I remember a couple of thoughts, and it was almost like a dream, but then I went there and I started getting, uh-oh, and I felt myself pulling back from it because I didn't want to go for no other reason, but I guess I felt vulnerable. Yeah. And then when I started coming back out there, I want to be back where I was. And I remember started trying to catch up with the breath work to get, I want back.
More.
And I remember because my partners had some, look, I won't say childhood trauma, probably would be, with her mum especially. And mum's very hard, and and I just remember being concerned about where she might go with it. And at one stage I remember, I thought, did she touch my hand? Because she was laying beside me. And I thought there was a big part of me that wanted to just get up and make sure that she was okay. And I thought, no, she's got to do this. She's in a
there's a safe container.
Safe place where everybody, and you talked about that a lot, Girds, at the start of it. We're all here in a safe place and we're watching you. And so I thought, no, I've got to let her ride that. And as it was, when we woke up, Josh came over and we all shared our journey. And I said, where did you go? And she said, oh, it was all about mum. I went, wow, that's what... Selfishly, I wanted her to achieve that. But I certainly wasn't going to put any sort of... those thoughts into her to make her go there. I just wanted her to go where she wanted to go with that, which turns out it was that space. But we left there and stopped on the way home to do some shopping, and it felt like I was walking on air the whole time. It was bizarre. I've never felt that way. And, and the more people I speak to about it, I spoke to a group of firefighters recently, and, shouting it from the rooftop, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. And there was a couple there that were, I'm like you, Jando, I'm if I close my eyes, I'm thinking about other things. No, this is totally different. It was just a really gratifying experience. I'd never experienced anything like that, and it was, I guess I was shocked to know that I was capable of going to that place.
The breath is the medicine.
Oh, it was, yeah. And I still think about it every day. I think about that.
Yep.
When can I go again? When can I go again? It's almost like a...
On that, Gerd, so what's happening there when, we're going through this? Because I experienced that altered level of consciousness as well.
Yep.
And those points in time, where you're, I think, Jando, saying, you're in that place, I'm guessing that's where the mind stops. That place is where, you're obviously altered level of consciousness, and you've that monkey mind, that thing that's going round and round, it seemed to just stop and go away, and then you could just be. Like that's what it felt like to me. Like you're just here experiencing whatever this is. And like you said, that's a different experience for a lot of people.
Yep.
What's happening at that point in time?
Yeah, well, you're hyperventilating. So basically, there's no oxygen left. Basically, there's all oxygen, and there's no carbon dioxide left in the body, in the system, right? Yep. So essentially, that's what's happening. So your pH levels totally change, and then you're just allowed to sort of, the nervous system corrects itself, and you just let go, and the concentration goes to the breathing technique as opposed to what you're having for dinner, if you've got to hang the clothes out, and then once you relax in that state, and when you get to that point where, I always say to people, like if it's physical, when you get to that point where you feel like you need to pull back, that's okay, because we've all got our own, health situations, and whether it's, high blood pressure, heart rate, whatever. But if it's emotional or it's energy and it's fear, well, then you need to, and I said it on the day, you need to lean into that, because that is where the real work happens. That is where, like whatever it is that you need to go through. And again, you always get what you need with breathing. You always get what you need. Where you are on your journey, you'll be met. It won't give you an experience that, I've never seen or heard of someone that's gone, oh my God, I'm never going to do that again. That opened up something that I just can't deal with. It'll always give you just a little bit, so it's like, okay, so there's a taste of what it could be for you, and then what you've seen or what you've experienced. And the next time you can relax a little bit more and you can maybe go deeper into that, you might go into something completely different. Whenever you go in with an expectation, generally you get something totally different, or an expectation, So, it's just incredible to think that, the breath, the science of the breath, and we talk a little bit about, nose breathing and mouth breathing, and this is a nose breathing technique. So you get all the benefits of what that means to breathe through the nose. It warms the air. There's an exchange there with nitric oxide, and all these different things that happen when you go into a session like that. They all have different chemical implications on your being at that moment, and that's why it's the unknown.
And too, Josh, he experienced something totally different to what I did, and I think you probably talk about it, Josh, with the.
I just had I actually had some physical pains, in different parts of my body at different times through that journey as well, which was quite interesting. Some very distinct ones, like some in my arms, and then a little bit my hips, stuff like that. And then, some varied experiences towards the end, like when we were coming back out. I felt like I was like I'd melted into the floor, almost like I was just. It was very, very,
very grounded.
It was like I was just like I was part of the floor. It was really weird.
Yeah,
it's really, really weird.
A lot of the physical pain that we, energy gets stored in the body from trauma. We don't really realise it. It can be from childhood. It can be from, being an adult. Things that we've witnessed sometimes get stored in parts of the body. And so what that does, that process allows us to actually process some of those pains, and move some of that energy out. And generally, when you're doing different sorts of therapies, no one's really giving you any indication around what's actually energy stored in your body and things like that. So this is another technique that you can use just to process some of that stuff and move it out of your body, because it's just stored in there, yeah? And so when you get into that altered state, it can be a physical thing. Sometimes it can be a very physical thing, and then you'll have someone come and you had IMRA and you had some different things with vibration through instrument that'll actually help you shift that energy through the body. I know that's sort of a bit esoteric and those sorts of things. But I mean, that's where it gets to when you start going down that path. There's lots of different ways, to commence healing and continue on that healing journey. And some of it is energetically and with stuff that you're holding in the body. So that is also a way to process it with those breathing techniques.
Yeah. The other thing I was quite impressed with is at the end of it, when I think you come over and we're talking about certain, parts of the exercise or the session, and I sort of said, I felt I went, and you go, I know you were in it. So that was quite, you guys have got a gauge on the room of who's actually, you can witness and see who's.
Yeah, with that, when you get into that hyperventilated state, there's a thing called tetany, so a lot of people in that room that day, there was a lot of energy moving. There was, as you said, before, there was a lot of people that hadn't done that kind of work there. So it wasn't people from our community, essentially. There was a lot of new people there that were sort of trying that for the first time. So there was, a lot of people that were there with like lobster hands.
I felt my hands were like that.
And so that's a lot of energy that's also being caught up. Yep. And, that's why, we can massage the forearms and we can try and release some of that energy as well. So,
It's amazing. It was an amazing experience, to say.
Yeah.
it's hard to describe like the whole journey, but
Yeah.
I can say it was definitely different, and would definitely recommend doing that for anybody. Like it was.
Yeah.
It was
Well, that's deep work.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think what's really important for just people in this day and age, that they just have a look at some different simple techniques that they can just use on a daily basis. That's what's really important.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, it's beautiful. You can come and do that. Say if you did that like once a month, once every 6 weeks, you get a call, you feel like, oh, I need that. You lay down, you get activated, you come out with, some sort of release of past life, childhood trauma, whatever it may be. Don't worry. You process those things with that type of work.
Yeah.
But what's really important is that people, they arm themselves with the tools to just get through day-to-day life and day-to-day trauma and stress.
Yep.
Everyone's full of it at the moment. Cost of living's gone through the roof. I mean, there's shit going on all around the world that no one has any control over, really, and all they can do is go back to the self and just be the calmest, most kind of independent, resourceful person that they can be. And how do they do that? With their own techniques and building in their own practices. Especially for the masculine, like with that piece around, like we speak about, what it was like, the discipline to be a professional athlete and what I got from that. Like, I mean, without that discipline, that was one of the things that I really missed, because I retired and then I went, well, I don't have to do anything. I went into a gym once, I looked at a rowing machine, I said, I'm never doing one of those things again, and I just took all the pressure off myself, and then after a couple of months I got lost. Because I just actually really missed the discipline of making myself do things that I don't want to do. And that's why we do a lot with our retreats. We do a lot of cold water immersion. We do sweat lodges. It's like, making yourself comfortable in an uncomfortable environment is the best thing you can do. Just find a way to get through you guys know it, find a way to get through different situations. And then all of a sudden the hard become easy and the mundane just becomes something you can do with a smile on your face. And when you start going down that path, that's when life changes. That's when the vibration raises, and that's when you're having an impact on the people around you.
And we've only touched on such a small experience with it. I'm sure, moving forward with the retreats that you do, and there's a lot more for us to explore rather than just that one session which was quite beneficial. Well, for both of us, it was, and it's simple and it's cheap.
Yeah, well, you guys, like we have we have a little bit of integration at the end of the sessions where we come over and spoke to you guys. We brew a chai, but on the retreats, life, we say life is an integration, right? It's just continue. Like, you take an experience like that, and then you're always integrating that into, how did it feel? What is that? Why was it like that? Why do I now look at this way? Whatever. Once you become aware of that, it becomes like on your day-to-day life, it just becomes about the integration. What we do on the retreats is we spend a lot of time in integration. So what your experience was like for you is going to mean something to him, because you're going to say, oh, I had this trauma when I was a kid and this happened. This guy might be over there, mightn't have thought about that, might have had that locked away, and might go, oh, shit, I had that. And then he's listening to you on the way that you process that, and he's getting ideas over there going, oh, wow, okay, yeah, so you do that, right. Well, that happened to me. And then the guy there is talking, about something else that he then relates to, and then the whole circle of integration there, and everyone's got their story that has an impact on everyone else. And we'll do that after the breathing. We go on a 4-hour hike. We'll do that after the hike. We'll do that after, we do a deep meditation. We do a sound healing, and all these different experiences where guys just get to sit around, because, it's fantastic now that there's awareness about, men communicating. I think that's wonderful, guys getting together over a beer or a coffee. And if that's what it is, that's what it is. But what are they taking away from that? They get rid of it, but then they go back to their normal life, and then they build up again till they need a release, and then how do they release it? So with this integration and with these tools that the guys take home from retreat, it's like, when you get home, this is what you can do to make sure that, you stay in your center. So you stay in the balance of the masculine, what you've seen here, what you've been able to experience, you take back into your day-to-day life. That is the purpose of the work that we're doing. The breath work is one arm of that, and it does, and we open that up for men and women, which is great. But the men's work and the retreats that we run is especially around that. It's an education piece around allowing guys just to stay in, the balanced masculine more often than not.
Which I think we've lost along the way somewhere. I mean, there's been a massive shift in relation. You see some of the young kids growing up, it might be in a single mum relationship, or they haven't got that, masculine figure around them all the time. And I think there's part of that with, I guess, looking in our world, Josh, where if you are suffering from the traumas of the job and life, it's still very hard to not give in to that. As in, come home, you've still got to be the man of the house. Whereas what you're talking about on the retreats is a group of men I won't say exposing, but talking about their shared experiences and then getting together. And I think that's the key. We've missed that. I'd never heard of it until talking with you at the breathwork seminar, and you mentioned the retreat coming up. I think that's where we need to get back to, and men being men, like you say, and that's certainly not a sexist thing. It's taking charge and, like you said, being with your family. It's not about coming home and this is what I want as the man of the house. It's listening to the kids and listening to the wife and you said your life's so much at peace, being able to say yes and do those things. I think that's, we need to get that back, I think.
I mean, even just sitting around the fire with, like, when's the last time you guys just sat around the fire with the boys? Like, and, we do a lot of that stuff, that we spoke about, but we also just hang out. We cook everything over the fire, we're just, the guys, that's what we've done all, like, through all whole of existence is just hang out by the fire and
share stories,
and pass knowledge on to the young men coming through and all that sort of stuff. That rite of passage, all of that stuff just doesn't happen anymore. And like you can get boys at a certain age to come in and do some things, but I think the work needs to start with their father. With the guys that are at that age where, they need to understand that they're passing down the knowledge. They're going to be the elder at some point. What are they going to, what can they share with this, young man that's coming in about respect and about, treating people the right way or process or discipline? And what is it? What are you instilling? What are they, what are these young men seeing in you that's going to inspire them to be their best? Are they seeing you, helping out in the house? Are they seeing you disciplined with your practices? Are they seeing you, blind drunk? And are they seeing you abusive? I mean, what are they seeing? What are you showing them?
At some point, that cycle has to be broken. If that's been your grandfather down to your father down to, that cycle's got to be broken somewhere.
It's just no excuse to say, well, that's all I've known. Yeah. Right. I mean, you can be the circuit breaker.
And I guess put that in a frontline context as well, by virtue of the hierarchical sort of organisation and the way that we operate through rank systems and stuff like that. They all do it. They're all the same, the organisations in that respect. At some point, you're going to be a senior person and you're going to be a pseudo mentor to people coming in as well. So it's the same context at work as well, about being that mentorship. And I think we've spoken about on previous episodes about sort of being vulnerable at times as well, and sharing knowledge through that vulnerability as well, and making it okay to, making it safe to share certain things as well. I think we've got a bit of a responsibility there to lead by example and demonstrate that for the newer people coming through, so that when they get into that position, like you're saying, that they can then carry that on as well.
But I would imagine that, especially in your line of work, sometimes that'd be seen as a sign of weakness.
Oh, most definitely.
And that's the balance.
Exactly. We're trying to shift that balance, but that's been, as long as I've been in the job, it was always that, no one wanted to stand up and, you didn't see the signs back then of it's too weak to speak. There was none of that sort of advertising getting out there. It was, you just didn't say nothing.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I think I come in right at the early change of mental health within the job, where it was, they would sometimes get a counsellor in after a bad incident, but it it was a long time sort of coming. It was
the connection between, you know, suppression and abuse.
Oh, yeah.
It's frightening.
Yep.
It's frightening. And, you know, and also there's a masculine way to deliver a message as well.
Mm.
You know, you don't have to be, you know, a blubbering mess to be able to deliver a strong message about how you feel. You know, like, get yourself together and get yourself together through being disciplined and knowing who you are and doing the hard work on yourself, and then deliver your message. You know, it doesn't have to be all tears and really feminine way. Like, there's just ways, you know, when you've been doing the work for a while and you know who you are, to you deliver a message, a strong message from the masculine. It's cool. It's
vulnerability doesn't have to equal blubbering mess, weakness, not coping. Vulnerability is like being authentic and genuine in what you're delivering.
That's right.
Not necessarily being not coping, so to speak. And then once you open those doors, I guess that's when those sharing of experiences can happen, and people can start learning from others' experience, so that they, I guess, know what, well, not know, but can have other options to deal with things when it arises for them as well.
Yeah.
You know, really important to share and that vulnerability piece too, I think.
Totally.
Both in our line of work, but like as you're saying, in general as well, especially passing that down onto our kids.
Yeah.
Being that leader of, leading by example.
So along with those retreats, Girds, are you seeing a big shift in the people attending? For example, is it father and son sort of coming along, or is it young men, you know, that vulnerable 17, 18-year-old age, or is it, I'm guessing, a mixture of everything? But
no, it's mainly geared for the moment for kind of, we probably have a demographic between like 25 and 70.
Yeah.
So never too old to start that journey, you know. But yeah, we haven't done sort of the father and son thing at this point. We're just kind of focused on the adult male, and I think we're gonna do some programs for that pathway to manhood, which is important as well. But it gets a little bit, of course, complicated, you know, like with getting minors and that into that sort of environment without adults and all that sort of stuff. So,
sure.
you know, of course, when you're going to try and do something productive like that, you know, you meet the bureaucratic side of the world in which we live. So, so we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just working on the men, and you get all, you know, different people that have you know, been on some sort of path before, a spiritual path. Some people have literally just saw it on social media and have just signed up and were at the pub and have just driven up, you know. Then it doesn't matter. It's everyone is welcome, regardless of your, you know, level of experience or whatnot, as long as you come with an open mind, and you know, we'll let the work take its course.
You mentioned before, Girds, about obviously that event that we went to is, you know, deep work. But then you said, you know, there's some important practices and shorter and I guess more easily accessible tools. What are some of those things that you're passing on?
Just different techniques. So if you find yourself getting overwhelmed with a situation, you can just remove. Like, how many times do you feel like sometimes you need to remove yourself from your family environment because it's just all too much? Like, I live with 3 women. I love them to death. My God. Hey boys, I'm actually just about to go into the jungle for a couple of days because I need to get away every now and again. I've got a mate, I'm meeting him, we're going to sit by the fire for a couple of days, you know. And just remove yourself and go into a 3-minute breath, you know, where I'm just going out of the sympathetic into the parasympathetic. Just, you know, it's just a nose breathing technique. There's so many different techniques. Like sometimes, you know, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and you got like the mind's really busy. It's like, oh my God, I'm just going to lay here for the next couple of hours. Or I just implement like a breathing technique, and within like 20 minutes I'm gone again.
Yep.
Just things like that. Just basic things, like you're in the car, you're driving. I do breathing techniques like all the time, especially like my daily practice is like I do a lot of movement, a lot of calisthenics movement. Then I'll go into breathing techniques at the end of that, and then I'll drop into a meditation, you know.
Yeah, nice.
So I might do maybe 5 or 6 different breathing sessions a day.
Yeah, right.
And one might be 20 minutes and then one might be 3 minutes. You know, there's so many different pranayamas out there that can just give you what you need in that moment.
I guess we've touched on with a couple of other guests about this breathing and about the need to I guess develop a disciplined practice around it so that you are able to access and use those techniques in that moment when you're stressed. When I need to remove myself, or or in our context, if you're going to a stressful job or whatever, you need to be able to be doing those things daily to then access them when you need them.
Yeah. I think it definitely helps.
Yeah.
It becomes automatic. It's like you find yourself in a situation. I find myself all of a sudden I'm going, like, a really good one, and everyone can just use this one, and I do it all the time, is like 3 seconds in the nose, 6 seconds out. So longer exhale than inhale, stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. Do that 5 times. And you'll just feel your heart rate drop, you feel your blood pressure, you just feel your whole body, the nervous system just correct itself. And that, mate, you do that for 2 minutes and, feel into how you were before the practice and after the practice, and you'll be worlds apart. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's really not. We just don't use it.
Yeah, true. We don't access it.
But everyone says, "I'll take a deep breath." Oh, someone's getting upset. I'll take a breath. No one really knows what you're talking. Says it for the right reason. They're actually just saying it to calm you down. But it actually, take a breath. Take a breath, literally. And take 5 or 6 breaths.
It's about that exhale too, right, Girds? Like you take a deep breath is one thing. If you're just going all the way in, you actually. My understanding is you're actually jacking your sympathetic.
Inhale activates, and exhale, settles.
So you got to balance both and try and extend that exhale.
Exhale, especially if you want to, jump from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. It's all about longer exhale than inhale. And if you want to activate, like sometimes an activated breath, like a thing like a Kapalbhati, which is almost like a fire breathing. You hear a lot of those people go. You do something like that, like an activated breath before you do a gym session, or something like that, or before you want to, I don't know, go and do the dishes, or I don't know, whatever you want to do. But you don't always want to be in that calm space. You want to activate yourself. You want to sometimes wake up in the morning, and sometimes I'll do like a calming breath into a meditation, into an activated breath, into up and at 'em. So you can use it once you got, your tools there, you can just use them how you need to, how you see fit.
How good's that? And I guess it probably just comes back to that education awareness, understanding what's going on within our body and our nervous systems.
Yes.
And then having those tools to apply them in those appropriate times for whenever you need that physiological reaction.
And there's just so many, we've spoken about a couple of different techniques, and you can't do it on a podcast, right? But when you guys upgrade and you're doing like the video links, then you'll be able to do some breathing and stuff as well. But obviously, there's so much stuff online.
Yep.
Like for those people that are just listening, they go, "What the hell are these guys talking about breath work? Why would where would I get breathing techniques from?" Well, just honestly, just go online. There's thousands of them on there, and you know what? Just pick one that suits, that you're comfortable with. You don't have to do all of them. Just pick a couple that you can just then take away and go, right, this is when I'm going to use this. This is when I'm going to do this. And really, try and meditate. Try and sit in stillness. It's such a gift. I can't promote it highly enough. I never thought I would be. I never even knew what meditation was when I was, until I was 30. So if I can transition across to something like that and get so many benefits out of it, it's such a blessing. And it's a game changer. To have control of. We all think we are the mind, but once you can separate yourself from the mind, you start looking at different things from totally different perspectives. You realise the mind is actually, what do they say? The mind's an awful master, but a great servant. You use it when you need it. You form a great relationship with it. You treat it like another part of the body as opposed to it always being everything. And then it changes. Things change around that. I know that sounds weird.
No, not at all.
I know that sounds a bit weird.
We can vouch for that whole experience that we sort of shared. It, like you said, game changer. Definitely a game changer.
And I reckon another big thing, especially for the men, is self-acceptance. Just accepting where you are and what's happened, and understanding that everything that's happened to you has got you to where you are. You mightn't be in a good place, but just accept none of it can be actually changed as time, and you can do these different practices with, like with breathing techniques and meditation. All right, I'm accepting, I'm putting my hand up. Yep, this is my journey. Everything has got me to this moment. What's going to happen from here on, I can control. What's happened before this is actually, like, it's very relevant. I get it, but there's nothing I can do about it. So at least acknowledge it, accept where you are and who you are, and then move forward in a different direction if it needs to be that way. But, I think we all try and we feel guilty, as men, and, I should have done this, I've done that. Well, maybe you should have, but you didn't. And you're here and, continually giving yourself a hard time and beating yourself up about things that have happened in the past. Let me tell you, they're not going to do anything for you. It's just going to allow you to be the victim, sit in that old, I should have, I could have, and all that sort of stuff. Again, like, step out of that, step into your power. I know it's easy to say it, but I've been there and I've done it. I'm living it. And then choose to move forward in a different way with a different mindset, Step into your power again.
Good advice.
Yeah, bloody oath. So just quickly on, we've been talking about your retreats and the experience that we had.
Yeah.
We've neglected to mention the name of what you've established with IMRA. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and the other offering that you've also got as well?
Yeah, well, we do basically the two different offerings. There's the men's and women's breathing, and there's the retreats.
Yep.
And we do a 1 day and a 3 day. Yep. So, the 1 day usually filters into the 3 day, and then the 3 day boys will usually, come a couple of times, or then we'll filter back into the 1 day, time permitting. And then, there's a lot of guys that just come across all three different disciplines. So, it's called Reconnect.
Yep.
Imra's a very different. You guys met him on the night. He's a very different character.
Yep.
He's got a lot of different gifts that he shares. A lot of people probably get a little bit overwhelmed. He's 6'6" and looks like Jesus. But he's a very spiritual guy. He's been in the corporate world. He played volleyball for Australia, but and he probably ignored his gifts for a long time, but sort of stepped into those over the last 15 years and is and is now doing a lot of brilliant work in the community, as you guys would have witnessed. And yeah, like the 1 day retreats we go through, there's some deep breathing, there's some breathing into meditation, which again just makes it, especially after a long breathing period, to go into a meditation. It's almost like a shavasana. Anyone that's done yoga, the last part there, and then we take you through a journey there. There's cold water immersion, there's sitting by the fire. On the 1 day ones, we cook by the fire, there's lots of chai, there's lots of integration. So there's lots of different triggers on the day that lead off onto different things. We're pretty agile with our programming. And then the 3 days, it's the same thing. We've got like a basis of 3 or 4. We do some movement, different modalities, but then we just see what flows in and out, depending on the group as well. So that's what we're up to, yeah. And we run 4 or 5 of the big retreats every year, and we run about 4 or 5 of the 1 day ones, and we're just building out the event ones now, which is the 2 hour sort of breathwork ones that you guys experience. Got one on the Gold Coast soon. I don't know when.
May the 4th?
May the 4th, Star Wars Day. That's a 1 day retreat on the Goldie.
Right.
So anyone that's interested to come down and have a look at what we do in greater detail, you're more than welcome. Just go onto look at me, I sound like I'm advertising, and I don't even, the website is,
it needs to be advertised.
reconnectedmen.com.
Yep.
reconnectedmen.com, I think.
We'll stick some show notes up as well.
Yeah, we'll stick all the links to you.
Come and check it out. If you've never done this style of thing before, and I'm sounding like an absolute weirdo, well, that's okay.
No,
I know who I am.
Yeah,
it's all good,
mate. I think if for those who are apprehensive, just give it a crack, because Geno and I both had a go, and I'd like to go back and do it again.
Yeah.
We both have very, very positive experiences with it. So
yeah. Well, we can also put something together for your crew. Get a few of the colleagues together, and we can just come and do a breathe. Like, we're happy to share the medicine. Yeah. That's what it's a service that we provide. I've never spoke. This is the first time I've ever really spoken about it, boys. So that's why it's been probably a little bit clunky. I'm used to talking about rugby league, and that's all I've ever spoken about for 15 years. Now I'm talking about something which is great, but it takes a bit of getting used to.
Yeah, no,
that's for sure.
No, well, mate,
some good information.
we appreciate that you are speaking to us about this, and we really appreciate your time and having us in your home as well, mate. So thank you for that, and also thank you for what you're doing and providing back. You've certainly been very generous with us, and it's certainly been very generous with the community and your knowledge as well. So, thanks.
Thank you, but I'm still in the work. I am deep in the work. It's continual for me, and people say, what do you... It's like, I know that if I'm doing the work on myself, I'm providing the service that I need to provide, and that won't stop. Because I know that if I go and just focus about, solving everyone else's problems, I'll have my own problems. I'm not here to solve anyone else's problems. I'm actually just here to do the work on myself, because that's what I can control, and what comes on the back of that is what I can provide others. That is it.
Well, that's great for us, because we definitely need people around like yourself and Imra to do that for us. So much appreciated.
Pleasure, boys, and thanks for coming up. The sunny coast.
What a view for those listeners who can't see. This is
this
is awesome.
No, thanks a lot, mate. We appreciate it, and watch this space. We might, might put a breathe on.
Good luck with the podcast. Well done, boys.
Thanks, Girds.
Great job.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please show your support by subscribing, liking and rating the podcast on your listening and social media platforms. We are always looking to improve what we do. If you have feedback, suggestions for further guests, topics, or would like to be a guest yourself, please contact us via Instagram.